What if the picture of hell that scares millions of Christians is not the picture an ancient Jewish text actually gives us? What if the sin that leads to the darkest place is not just doing evil, but helping evil survive after everyone already knows it is evil? And before we go deeper, do this with intention. Like this video, if you want more lost history deep dives, subscribe if you enjoy ideas that challenge easy answers. And share this with one friend who is brave enough to wrestle with difficult truth. Most people have heard of the Book of Enoch, but they usually hear about it in whispers. It is called forbidden, removed, dangerous, hidden. People talk about it like it is a cursed file buried in the basement of religion. That mystery alone is enough to pull people in. But the real shock is not the mystery around the book. The real shock is what the book says. Because when most people think about hell, they imagine one place, one final zone of fire, one destination for the bad and one destination for the good. Simple, clean, easy to preach, easy to fear, easy to control. But in 1 Enoch Chapter 22, the afterlife does not look simple at all. It looks divided, specific, ordered. It looks less like one giant prison and more like a waiting place where different human stories are held in different conditions until judgment. And that changes everything. Now let's be fair before we go any further. The Book of Enoch is not part of the Bible in most Christian traditions. It is, however, preserved in the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, and parts of it were found among the Dead Sea Scrolls, which means it was known and valued in the ancient world long before most modern debates about it began. It mattered deeply to many Jews in the Second Temple period. It also shaped ideas that later appear in early Christian thought. So even if someone does not treat Enoch as scripture, it still matters because it shows us how many ancient believers imagined judgment, evil, and the fate of the dead. That is why this topic is bigger than internet drama. This is not just about a lost book. This is about an older moral imagination, a different map of justice, a way of thinking that may be far more unsettling than the version many people learned in church. In Enoch's vision, the dead are not all gathered into one place. He has shown a great region of the earth with separate hollows, separate divisions, separate conditions. And those conditions are not random. They are tied to the kind of life a person lived, the kind of death a person died, and whether justice was settled or left hanging in the air. That alone is powerful because Enoch is not asking only, were you good or bad? He is asking something more precise. What remains unresolved around your life? What harm did you suffer? What harm did you cause? What wrong was paid for and what wrong was protected? That last question is where this becomes explosive, because according to the reading many people draw from this chapter, the most severe condition is not simply for ordinary sinners in general. It is for those connected to wickedness in a way that keeps it alive. Not just people who stumbled, not just people who failed, not just people who sinned and broke under the weight of their own weakness, but people who made room for evil to continue, people who joined themselves to it, people who helped it stay standing. That is a terrifying idea because it moves the conversation away from private mistakes and into public loyalty. It asks whether you became the shelter that wrongdoing hid inside. And if that is true, then the Book of Enoch is not mainly threatening reckless people. It is warning useful people, respectable people, protective people, people who make excuses, people who know better, people who help darkness avoid consequences. So tonight, I want to walk slowly through this ancient vision with you. I want to show you why it is so different from the picture many churches taught, why it hits so hard emotionally, and why the final category may be one of the most dangerous moral warnings ever attached to the afterlife. First, we need to understand what Enoch is actually describing. In chapter 22, Enoch is taken to a place connected with the dead, and what he sees is not chaos, it is structure. He sees divisions prepared for the spirits of the dead, and each division has a different purpose. Already, that should get our attention. This is not one giant furnace where every sinner is thrown together. It is an ordered holding place, a place of separation, a place where moral reality has texture. One group is at peace, another is restless. Another is separated in a dimmer condition, another is in clear distress. That means the afterlife in Enoch is not flat. It is not morally blurry. It is almost legal in its precision. It treats different human stories differently. Think about how radical that is. A righteous person who dies is not described the same way as a victim whose murder was never answered. A sinner who suffered for wrongdoing in life is not described the same way as a person who kept evil moving forward without ever facing justice. Enoch is not painting with one brush. He is drawing boundaries, and the first boundary matters a lot. In the first division, the righteous are held in peace, not necessarily in the final fullness people later call heaven, but in a place of brightness and rest. They are safe, preserved, waiting. That detail matters because it suggests even the righteous are awaiting a future judgment. The story is not over yet. History still matters. Final justice has not fully arrived. The second division is deeply moving. It is associated with those who suffered wrongful violence, especially those whose deaths were not answered with justice. They are not described as calm. They cry out. Their condition carries the ache of unfinished truth. Their blood, in effect, is still speaking. That idea should sound familiar because the Bible itself has moments like this. Abel's blood cries out from the ground. In Revelation, the souls under the altar cry, asking how long until justice comes. Enoch fits into that same emotional world. The dead are not all silent. Some are waiting with peace, others are waiting with protest. That alone should challenge a lazy view of morality. Enoch refuses to treat every death as spiritually identical. A person crushed by violence is not filed away in the same emotional category as a person who spent life feeding violence. Justice is sensitive to detail. Then comes the third division, and this is where the vision becomes psychologically sharp. This group is associated with sinners, but not in the simplest sense. These are often understood as people who did wrong and already received punishment during life. Their guilt is real, their wrongdoing mattered, but their account is not identical to that of the final group. Their condition is darker than the righteous, but not identical to the most severe chamber. In many readings, they are separate, diminished, settled in a sad way, but not under the same kind of unresolved doom as the worst category. And that is fascinating, because it suggests something morally uncomfortable. Enoch seems less interested in throwing every sinner into one pile than in distinguishing between kinds of guilt, kinds of consequence, and kinds of unfinished evil. That is very different from the religious language many people grow up hearing. Many are taught a broad message. Sin sends you to hell. Full stop. But Enoch seems to ask more questions. Did you face the truth about what you did? Did justice meet you in life? Did your wrongdoing stop with you, or did it spread through you into others? And that brings us to the fourth division, the one that gives this entire chapter its terrible force. This final place is commonly read as the place of the wicked, who were not judged in life and who aligned themselves with lawlessness, not just sinners as a giant category, not just weak people, not just broken people. The emphasis falls on people whose evil remained active, protected, or joined to the evil of others. Sit with that for a second. The worst condition is not merely for having sinned. The warning sharpens around the sustaining of wickedness. That means the Book of Enoch is not only concerned with the sins you committed by yourself in private. It is concerned with the wrong you helped survive in public, the wrong you defended, the wrong you normalized, the wrong you made profitable, the wrong you kept hidden, the wrong you gave a second life. This is where the vision stops being ancient in a distant way and becomes painfully modern. Because what does it mean to help wickedness continue? It means covering for abuse because the abuser is powerful. It means protecting corruption because the corrupt person is useful. It means hiding lies because the truth would embarrass your group. It means rewarding cruelty because cruelty gets results. It means building a system where the innocent keep bleeding, while the guilty keep getting better offices, better titles, better microphones, better excuses. When you read Enoch that way, the target is not random sinners in the street. The target is every structure that turns evil into something durable. And suddenly the question is not only, did I do wrong? The question becomes, what wrong did I keep alive? That is a far more dangerous question because many people can admit private failure. Fewer will admit that they became a wall around someone else's evil. Fewer will admit that they loved comfort more than truth. Fewer will admit that they chose peace with a corrupt system over pain with righteousness. This is why the chapter hits with such force. It does not merely scare the rebellious, it exposes the cooperative. It warns the assistant, the spokesman, the fixer, the loyal friend who knew, the leader who delayed, the witness who stayed silent, the person who said, yes, it is wrong, but we cannot deal with that now. And that changes the emotional center of hell. Instead of hell being about shocking outsiders, the warning turns inward toward insiders, toward people near power, toward people who carry enough knowledge to act, but enough fear to freeze, toward people who tell themselves that preserving the institution matters more than protecting the innocent. If you think about it, that is one of the most morally intelligent warnings an ancient text could give, because evil rarely survives on raw force alone. It survives through assistance, through networks, through silence, through polished language, through people who never stab anyone themselves but make sure the knives stay sharp. If this video is making you rethink what ancient judgment stories were really trying to say, tap like now, subscribe for more deep biblical mysteries, and send this to someone who loves hard questions more than easy slogans. Now, some people will push back here and say, hold on, are you saying Enoch teaches salvation by moral bookkeeping? Are you saying every wrong has a different room and that God is just organizing souls like files in a cabinet? Not exactly. Ancient apocalyptic texts use images, symbols, scenes, and locations to express spiritual truths. We should be careful not to turn every detail into a blueprint, but that does not weaken the message. It sharpens it. The image of separate chambers tells us something important about divine justice. Judgment is not careless. God does not confuse the wounded with the predator. God does not confuse the weak sinner with the hardened enabler. God does not confuse the one who paid dearly in life with the one who escaped consequences while keeping evil profitable. That is the point. Precision. And maybe that is why this vision unsettles people so much. General threats are easier to manage. Vague fear can be preached to everyone the same way. But a picture of justice with detail forces everyone to ask a harder question. Not just, am I a sinner? But what kind of sinner have I been? And what has my sin done in the lives of others? That question strips away hiding places. You cannot hide behind religious language if you protected abuse. You cannot hide behind generosity if you defended exploitation. You cannot hide behind tradition if tradition became your excuse for silence. You cannot hide behind loyalty if loyalty turned into betrayal of the innocent. This is where the Book of Enoch starts to feel almost prophetic for our own age. We live in a time when institutions fail in public. We see scandals in churches, governments, companies, movements, and families. Again and again, the greatest outrage is not only the evil act itself, it is the web of people who knew, the people who managed the story, the people who moved the offender, the people who called the victim dangerous, the people who made truth expensive. That is exactly the kind of moral world this chapter seems built to confront. And this is why the title of this video matters so much. The sins that actually send you there is not just clickbait when you read Enoch carefully. The answer is more uncomfortable than most viewers expect. It is not only lust, not only greed, not only anger, not only doubt. The deepest warning falls on complicity, sustained wickedness, joined wickedness, shared corruption. In simple English, the darkest problem is not just doing evil. It is becoming useful to evil. That phrase should haunt us, because many people never imagine themselves as villains, but they can imagine themselves as protectors, employees, parents, elders, voters, friends, pastors, advisors, or partners just trying to keep things from falling apart. And in that role, step by step, they begin defending what should have been exposed. That is how evil scales, not only through monsters, but through managers. Now let's make another important distinction. The Book of Enoch is not saying every mistake places someone beyond mercy. In fact, the very structure of the vision suggests differentiation. There is space in the moral universe for weakness, for consequence, for unsettled cases, for the righteous, and for those who suffered wrong. The text is not obsessed with flattening everyone into one mass. It is obsessed with telling the truth about each life. That matters because real justice needs memory. It must remember who harmed, who was harmed, who paid, who denied, who confessed, who hid, who continued, and who stopped the spread. And this is where the church question enters. Did the church remove Enoch because it was too dangerous? Many people say that very simply, but history is messier than a conspiracy slogan. Enoch was influential in some early Jewish and Christian circles, but it was not accepted everywhere in the same way. Over time, most Christian traditions did not include it in the canon, while the Ethiopian Orthodox Church preserved it. So, the story is not as simple as one meeting secretly deleting one book and replacing the truth with a lie. But even with that nuance, the discomfort remains real. Because whether the exclusion happened through long historical process, theological caution, or regional tradition, the result was the same for most believers. This vision did not become part of ordinary church teaching. Most people never heard this moral structure. Most people never heard that ancient religious imagination could focus so intensely on enabling evil, not just committing it. And maybe that is one reason the chapter keeps returning in modern conversations. Not because it flatters us, because it exposes a blind spot. Many religious systems are very strong at condemning obvious personal sin. They are often weaker at confronting protected sin. They know how to shame the wandering individual. They struggle more when wickedness is wrapped in status, money, tradition, or authority. But Enoch's warning goes straight there. It tells us that heaven and hell are not only questions about appetite. They are questions about allegiance. What did you stand with? What did you excuse? What did you let breathe through your silence? That is why I think so many people feel this chapter in their bones even before they finish reading it. It sounds ancient, but it recognizes a very modern terror. The fear that the worst thing a person can do is not to fall once, but to build shelter for ongoing harm. And if that is true, then repentance itself must be deeper than regret. It is not enough to say, I am sorry I was involved. The deeper question is, did I stop the machine? Did I tell the truth when it cost me? Did I protect the vulnerable when the powerful were angry? Did I break ranks with the lie? Did I pull my name away from the system that kept crushing people? Because in Enoch's moral world, guilt is not only about what passed through your hands, it is about what kept moving because of your hands. That is a brutal standard, but it is also strangely hopeful. Why hopeful? Because it means righteousness is not vague either. It means goodness is not just private niceness. It means refusing complicity matters. It means telling the truth matters. It means breaking with wickedness matters. It means standing with the wrong matters. It means heaven's justice is not blind to the machinery of harm. That is actually beautiful. The victim is not forgotten. The hidden cry is not lost. The person everyone buried under paperwork, denial, or spin is not erased in the court of God. Enoch says the moral universe remembers. And for people who have been lied about, crushed, or ignored, that kind of vision is not terrifying first. It is comforting. It says your story was not filed under unimportant. It says the cry that no one answered on earth did not disappear in heaven. If this conversation feels heavier and more real than typical afterlife talk, stay with it. Subscribe if you want more scripts that go where others won't, and share this video with someone who has seen how silence can protect the wrong people. Now, I want to turn the light directly on us, because it is easy to hear all this and imagine obvious villains, dictators, predators, corrupt clergy, violent criminals. And yes, the warning absolutely reaches them. But if we stop there, we miss the point. The real danger of this chapter is that it reaches ordinary people in ordinary roles. It reaches the friend who keeps making excuses for someone dangerous. It reaches the board member who votes to hide the scandal. It reaches the relative who pressures the victim to stay quiet for the family name. It reaches the worker who keeps altering reports because the boss said to. It reaches the influencer who knows the story is false but shares it because outrage pays. It reaches the pastor who calls exposure gossip when exposure would cost the church money. It reaches the citizen who loves justice in theory but protects injustice when the guilty wear the right colors. That is the real terror here. Evil often survives through normal people making reasonable choices. And once you see that, Enoch becomes less like a fantasy map and more like a mirror. Who have I protected? What have I excused? Where have I confused peace with cowardice? Where have I treated truth as a threat because truth would cost too much? These are not dramatic movie questions. These are daily judgment questions. This is also why the chapter speaks so strongly to our digital age. Online, people can help wickedness continue without ever touching the original act. They can smear a victim, hide evidence, repeat a lie, mock the truth teller, reward the offender with attention, turn cruelty into entertainment. They can become an amplifier for darkness and still think of themselves as uninvolved. But ancient moral wisdom would not call that uninvolved. It would call that participation. And that should sober all of us, because in a connected world, enabling has become easier than ever. You do not need a throne to help wickedness continue. You just need a platform, a paycheck, a motive, or a fear. Now let me say something equally important. Fear-based religion has damaged many people. Some viewers hear words like hell and immediately feel manipulation. Maybe you were threatened with hell for asking questions, for being sad, for not fitting in, for doubting, for surviving abuse, for being human. If that is your story, I want to be careful here. The power of Enoch 22 is not that it gives religious leaders a bigger stick. Its power is almost the opposite. It places the weight of judgment not on fragile people asking hard questions, but on those who uphold harm. That matters. This is not a text aimed mainly at the bruised conscience that wants to do right. It is a warning aimed at the conscience that grew comfortable around wrong. And if you are the kind of person who aches over truth, who worries about becoming better, who hates the idea of harming others, that very ache is already different from the coldness this final category suggests. The people in Enoch's darkest warning are not trembling souls begging to be honest. They are souls allied with wickedness. That difference matters more than many fear-driven systems admit. So what do we do with this ancient vision? First, we let it search us, not with panic, with honesty. Where am I tempted to protect what should be exposed? Where have I confused loyalty with righteousness? Where have I helped a lie outlive the truth? Second, we let it reshape our idea of holiness. Holiness is not just private purity. It is public courage. It is the refusal to become useful to evil. It is the strength to break with whatever feeds harm, even when that choice is lonely. Third, we let it deepen our compassion. Because Enoch does not only talk about the wicked, it gives space to the wronged. It remembers the cry of those who were denied justice. If we claim to care about judgment, we cannot ignore victims while obsessing over abstract doctrine. A moral universe that hears the cry of the wounded should produce people who listen on earth. Fourth, we let it break our addiction to easy categories. Not everyone fits in the same moral box. Not every wrong is the same. Not every consequence is the same. Not every silence is innocent. Not every peace is holy. Enoch forces us to think carefully, and careful moral thought is something our age desperately needs. And finally, we remember that the deepest horror in this chapter is not fire for weak people. It is darkness for those who loved wickedness enough to keep it alive. That is the line I cannot get away from. Not just evil done, evil sustained, not just sin committed, sin protected, not just guilt, complicity. That is why this chapter feels dangerous, because it shifts the battlefield from obvious rebellion to hidden partnership. It says, the most serious moral question may not be whether you ever fell. It may be whether, after seeing evil clearly, you still chose to stand beside it. And maybe that is exactly why this ancient book keeps surviving every attempt to ignore it. Because somewhere deep down, people know this warning is true to life. We have all seen evil survive through support. We have all seen systems built to absorb exposure and keep going. We have all seen how often the world punishes the truth teller faster than the wrongdoer. Enoch looks at that world and says, none of it is missed. There is a memory beyond our memory. There is an accounting beyond our accounting. There is a justice that knows the difference between the broken, the wounded, the repentant, and the one who built a roof over corruption. And that means the final question is not only whether hell is different from what many churches taught, the final question is whether we have been fearing the wrong thing. Maybe the greatest danger was never simply being imperfect. Maybe the greatest danger was becoming loyal to what destroys other people. Maybe the darkest place was never meant for the struggling sinner who knows he needs mercy. Maybe it was meant for the useful servant of evil, the smiling guardian of the lie, the person who helped wickedness keep a pulse. If that is even close to what Enoch is warning about, then the message is unforgettable. Do not just avoid sin. Refuse alliance with it. Do not just regret wrongdoing. Expose it. Do not just protect your image. Protect the innocent. Do not just ask whether you were personally clean. Ask whether your silence made the world dirtier. Because one day, according to this ancient vision, the moral architecture of reality will tell the truth about every life. Not only about what we desired, but about what we defended. Not only about what we did in secret, but about what we kept alive in public. Not only about our weakness, but about our allegiance. And when that day comes, the most chilling question may not be, did you sin? It may be, why did you help sin survive?